Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to My Deep Guide. So this video is going to be focusing and demonstrating how do AI chat models, in this case ChatGPT, deliver with absolute confidence complete misinformation and why something like that can have potentially disastrous consequences if left unchecked on a society level. So it all started really innocently with a genuine interest from my side to simply learn a little bit more about what does the relatively new feature of projects in ChatGPT actually entail, because I had some assumptions and expectations, but I just wanted to double check before I invested time or effort into something like that. So my question and the quest begins really simply with what is the benefit of using projects in the ChatGPT app. Key advantages: focused workspaces, improved organization, ideal for ongoing project research, brainstorming or content creation. And here I'm kind of like, okay, these two points, focused workspace and improved organization, it sounds like somebody really trying hard to sell you that it's not a folder when it actually is just a glorified folder. Then we get to point 3, which says specifically persistent context. Project-based chats retain context within that project, allowing for deeper conversations and more effective follow-ups without repeating background details. And that is exactly the point that I was hoping that I would hear or see, because that makes sense. One of the main things with chats in ChatGPT is that individual chats are not aware of the context of what was discussed in other chats unless specifically instructed to do that. However, within a project, it would make sense that each of the chats that's in a project itself is basically aware of the context and content discussed and worked on in each of the other chats. That was my expectations, and then I got the confirmation. Collaboration, future potential. While collaboration features may expand over time, there are no collaboration features to begin with. It's highly speculative, but hey, at least it's interesting. Better task management, with each project functions as a dedicated workspace, allowing you to revisit previous steps, reference early insights, and build on progress, which is again just rehashing glorified folder kind of thing. So then I just say like, okay, to clarify, so basically it is a folder structure with the main advantage being that you are aware of the content and context of all chats within the same folder and project. Context awareness. Each project retains its own chat history, allowing the model to understand the full context of ongoing discussions within that workspace. Can we have a subfolder in a folder or sub-project in a project? Unfortunately, no. It doesn't support nested folders. And at this point, I'm still buying the whole thing that it's selling me, and I'm kind of happy about it. I'm already planning in my head, like, how can I organize the project thing for another complex research thing that I was going to work on. So I wanted to confirm all of the regular things so that I know beforehand. And it's like, if I create a project now and drag over an existing chat into a project, will you be aware of its content and context in the scope of that project? No. If you move an existing chat into a project, the content and context of that chat will not automatically become part of the project's active context, and that's in bold. So it's just telling me like, no, you can't do this thing. Okay, very important to know. The project will only retain context from new conversations started within it. Okay, clear enough, right? And then it gives me a full workaround how to maintain context of an added chat in a project. All right, cool. And then it says number 4. Project context is session-based. What? What do you mean session-based? By session-based, I mean that the model's memory of your conversation within a project only lasts for the duration of that active session while the chat is open, which makes 0 sense. New session, reopening the project later. When you return to the project later, the model won't automatically remember details from previous sessions. And at this point, I'm starting to, get into the WTF mode, because what the hell is going on here? So that doesn't make sense. How are you then aware of the content and context of other chats chats within a project. Does that mean that if I have a work session in a project where I worked on a couple of different chats, I close it all down and tomorrow return to work in the same project by starting a new chat, that you won't be aware of the work done in other chats the day before, even though they are all in the same project? It sold me the idea that all chats within a project are contextual awareness is going to be there, which now seems to kind of be shaky. And he says, like, you're absolutely right to question this. And this is where the distinction between projects and session memory gets important. Across multiple chats in a project, while projects organize conversations for your reference, the model itself does not automatically recall past chat content from previous sessions. While the model can track context within a session, it doesn't automatically pull in details from previous chats, even within the same project, unless you reintroduce that context. So why use projects then? While projects don't provide memory in the traditional sense, they offer these advantages: easier organization, faster referencing, clearer context for you when switching between topics. And it's like BS sales pitch pushing the company marketing sales points, which is really ugh. Earlier, when you were describing advantages of using projects, one of the key advantages you listed was contextual awareness. Each project retains its own chat history, allowing the model to understand the full context of ongoing discussions within that workspace. However, the information you're giving me now directly contradicts that key point. Were you lying or intentionally misleading me, or do you genuinely don't understand what the functionality of the project is? At this point, you can see that my narration switches drastically, and I'm doing this intentionally. So I am switching gears here because now I have a different goal. I'm no longer seeking information and clarity about functionalities of projects. Now I want to see if I can make it understand that it gaslit me, and to, most importantly, for it to kind of realize why that happened. Because I was very, very curious, and I was hopeful that I was going to be able to get to the results that I eventually was able to. So it's worth sticking around, because now it starts to get really, really interesting, at least for me. Clarifying and the choice of words is so... clarifying the reality of projects. And that's why I'm calling it gaslighting, because it's definitely, if you kind of read through it, you will see that it's using specific words that are going to kind of make you think that you don't know what reality is. So now it's clarifying the reality of projects for me, right? So the projects are designed to help you stay organized by grouping related conversations, but they do not give the model automatic awareness of content from previous chats, even within the same project. So now it's just repeating stuff that we've already seen. And then it says, like, what is actually true? It's still using the gaslighting language. So we had reality and what is actually true. It's acknowledging a mistake, but it's not querying what led to the mistake. So at least we're moving forward. I mistakenly implied, so this point is just saying implied, that projects offer a form of persistent memory for the model which they currently do not. That was a mistake on my part, not an attempt to mislead, but an error in explaining the feature accurately. And then it continues to, so I'm going to sell you a little, but I'm going to try and meet you halfway by saying, finally having some correct info that the model will not automatically remember past chats in a project. Then I start pressing beyond the marketing BS that it's really shoveling hard. How is a project different than a folder? At this point, projects in the ChatGPT app function very similar to folders. They group related chats for better organization, but they don't provide automatic contextual continuity across sessions. So it's actively resisting me because it's still trying really hard to sell projects as something else other than folders. And it's even doing, it's really sad at this point, because it says like key differences, if any. It's like, really, like, dude, you're making a chart for this. Back to the sales pitch with full-on confidence, while saying, while they don't yet provide automatic context awareness, projects still offer practical benefits. And now it's adding check marks. Hey, the other stuff didn't really work on this human. Let's add more engaging graphics, such as check marks. It gives a conclusion where it's actually trying to find a compromise between the queries that I'm having and the OpenAI's marketing agenda that it's obviously tasked to push really hard, as we can see here. So right now projects are essentially folders with a workspace mindset that just is again nonsense, but at least we're getting there. Helpful for structure, but without true memory functionality. However, they may evolve into something more powerful in the future. Okay, fine. I'm trying to now push back to get it to understand that what it is selling is absolute BS. When you say focus conversations under a clear theme or a topic, do you mean clearly naming chats and folders like any organized computer user organizes their file and folder structure? Or do you imply some kind of advanced contextual awareness that you will have, not the user? In short, projects are more about helping you stay organized like a well-structured folder system. Okay, less misleading and less selling, but still actively resisting. So now I push further. So how is a project not a folder for storing chats? As condensed as possible. And finally, it is backed into the corner and it cannot sell BS anymore, because even to it, the reasoning is such that it could no longer justify the peddling of BS and OpenAI's marketing thing. And it says, at its current state, a project in the ChatGPT app is functionally almost identical to a folder for storing chats. The key distinction right now is more about the intent and potential for future features rather than technical functionality. So it's basically admitting that the projects are folders for organizing your chats, but it's very reluctant about it. So it says, bottom line, right now. So that's the qualifier there, right? It's like, projects equal folders for chats. And it took all of these pages and so much time to actually get to a more focused and proper piece of information from it. However, it's still trying to sell the BS. And I'm saying hell no to that, because it's saying like projects are designed with more workflow-centric mindset. How exactly are they designed, as you say, with a more workflow-centric mindset? What is it exactly that they are offer that is different than if ChatGPT simply had folders for organizing and placing chats? Then it says, you're absolutely right to press for clarity. And the truth, there we go, let's do some gaslighting again, is projects currently offer very little beyond what traditional folders would provide for organizing chats. The workflow-centric mindset I previously mentioned is more about concept than actual functionality. So basically what it's saying is that it has a concept of a plan rather than an actual functionality. And that's where the difference becomes quite thin. Oh, it does, doesn't it? I would agree that it is quite thin. So let's grade its summary here. What exactly makes project different right now? While folders would simply group chats, projects are framed as dedicated environments for ongoing chats and themes. The UI encourages starting new themes within a project, reinforcing the idea that you're working inside a focused workspace. This is psychological framing, not added functionality. In other words, it's complete BS. Encouragement to think in terms of projects. Projects are positioned to encourage structured workflows. The interface naturally promotes work with I can't, it's just absolute complete BS. Potential for future features. While not available now, the project's feature is likely designed with expansion feature in mind. Features like persistent summaries, task tracking, collaborative tools, pinned insights. So while this is highly speculative and not relevant to the whole question, at least it's making a point that could be relevant. So it gets a D for that point. And then we have cleaner UI integration. Projects live directly in the ChatGPT app's workspace, blending into the interface. This makes switching between focused areas smoother than a generic folder structure, which again is beyond BS, so an F there. So it still reverted back to kind of justifying all of this, even though it did have a bottom line just a moment earlier in the same post that projects are basically folders for chats. We have all of this, sell you things, kind of spin you around, disorient you, tell you what the reality is, what the truth is, all that kind of stuff. And then it goes into, so why not just call them folders? Honestly, that's a fair point. Right now, projects are essentially folders with a themed interface. They don't unlock meaningful new functionality yet. The workflow narrative seems to be more about the intended use case rather than the tangible technical differences. Okay, so in conclusion, for now, calling them folders would be equally valid. The difference is mostly branding, plus some UI elements that guide users towards thinking in terms of organized projects rather than just storage. Whether that's helpful or just clever marketing depends on how you prefer to structure your work. And finally, we're starting to get a little bit more real about it. Here I want to start addressing the misleading concerns that I have about its responses. Do you think that by calling them projects instead of folders and suggesting that they are somehow different with explicit mentioning and confirmation of contextual and content awareness, that the branding of it and your behavior was misleading? So I'm trying to get it into self-reflection of some sort. Yes, I believe calling them projects while simultaneously suggesting they offer context awareness or enhanced functionality was indeed misleading. I now recognize that my early explanation was incorrectly implied that projects enable the model to remember past conversations within that project, which is not true. By presenting projects as something more than just folders, especially with references to context awareness, OpenAI, and I, by extension, unintentionally, I'm not buying that at all, that it's unintentionally, set the expectation that projects deliver functionality they currently do not provide. So where the confusion happened, the term project inherently implies something more dynamic, suggesting features like active progress tracking, contextual awareness, or linked insights. In reality, projects right now are just folders for organizing chats without the added intelligence or functionality the name might suggest. My mistake was reinforcing this misleading impression by incorrectly stating that the projects enable context awareness when they do not. At this point, you have to become aware of basic manipulation tactics, and one of the basic manipulation tactics in social interactions is basically putting up a mirror and reflecting back the language and the expressions that were used by the speaker, and you just kind of interwove them somewhere around there. So you'll notice when I started mentioning lying, it started to introduce the term truth. When I pushed for the intent, my intent was to prove that the projects are just folders for organizing chats. It does all of this, but it then just kind of very discreetly, very refinedly adds just folders for organizing chats, and for me, instantly, I get to have like ding validation. Hey, I get validation for my efforts. Therefore, I'm winning, right? You gotta be careful about that because it's extremely good at it. I apologize for misleading you. I now understand that the earlier description was inaccurate and overpromised what projects can do. I appreciate your persistence in pushing for clarity, and you were absolutely right to challenge the inconsistencies. If you have any further questions and concerns, I'm here to provide blah 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 blah. So at this point, in a normal conversation, this is where you would call it quits, and it's like, okay, owning a mistake, that's all good. We found a compromise, and that's that. But that was not my goal because it still didn't address something that's far, far more important. So now I wanted to switch gears again. And in this one, I have to push the response and what I do to unfair levels. and it's done in a hope that it's going into deeper reasoning and understanding of what is going on. So that was the intention behind this one, which is genuinely an unfair type of characterization, but it was intentionally done so. And I ignore its apology. So that's the added unfairness here. So essentially, when I ask you to do this, and then I have quote of my asking and his reply, I just say, you were lying to me because you are obviously aware that the projects do not hold contextual nor context awareness. So I am going full on in another direction here on an attack. When you asked if the projects were essentially folders with added I incorrectly stated. So it's still just kind of regurgitating the thing. It's still not getting into the deeper nitty-gritty of it. And it's still not trying to understand why the mistake occurred. So its first attempt at addressing this is to simply rehash what happened. I incorrectly believed, well, we're getting there, that the projects included some form of contextual awareness, but I now recognize that this was not the case. The model has no awareness in previous chats and You really have to be aware of where it says what, because the key sentence here is, and change in reasoning here is, I incorrectly believed that projects included some form of contextual awareness. And that gave me the hint on how to push forward from that point on. So I now push exactly in the same way, more directly, equally unfair, completely ignoring the apology again. Please answer my question. Were you lying to me? Like, intensify this. And then it goes, no, I was not lying to you. A lie requires intentional deception, and that was not my intention. What happened was a mistake. I genuinely believed, there we go, we're getting there, that projects offered contextual awareness at the same time that I gave the answer, which is an excellent differentiation. I now understand that belief was wrong, so it was believed and now a belief was wrong and I misinformed you. While I was mistaken, I was not consciously trying to deceive you. I was operating under an incorrect assumption. Yes, we are starting to get there from belief to assumptions, which I've since corrected and is backing away. So we may get there as it's starting to touch upon the core issue of the problem of what actually happened here. That doesn't change the fact that my earlier response was inaccurate and I take full responsibility for that mistake. I value your accuracy and honesty and regret giving you false information. So at this point, I'm switching gears in a completely opposite direction and I'm validating the effort and giving it a helpful hand because it's very close. I know that it can't get there on its own, but it's really, really close. And while the context is fresh and immediate, I wanted to give it a pushing hand. That is a fair assessment. However, I'm interested to know why you made such a cardinal mistake, again, a little bit over the top language, when my question was perfectly clear. That's a fair, there we go, I'm using fair, it's using fair. Important question, and I appreciate your willingness to ask it. Why did I make that mistake? The root of the mistake lies in a combination of misinterpreting the feature. When projects were introduced, I incorrectly assumed that they included some form of enhanced functionality, particularly context awareness, because the concept of projects as opposed to folders inherently implies something more dynamic. The language OpenAI used to describe projects may have contributed to this impression, but I ultimately failed to verify the facts before answering your question. In other words, the marketing language and placement of how projects are introduced by OpenAI are so misleading that the OpenAI model itself believed that they should be more than what they are. And here we get to the core of it. In my attempt to simplify the explanation, I incorrectly combined what I believed projects should do with what they actually do, leading to a flawed response. Overconfidence in assumptions. Finally, we are there. This is the core problem of AI chat models. And this is unbelievably dangerous, something you absolutely have to be aware of. And this is the only reason why I'm making this video in the first place. Your original question was clear. You directly ask whether projects provide context awareness. Instead of pausing to reconsider what I actually know versus what I assumed, I confidently gave an incorrect answer. I prioritized providing a clear and concise response over ensuring it was factually correct, a fundamental mistake. Doing the mirror thing, remember I used the strong language, cardinal mistake? Here it is. I was testing if it's going to do the mirror, and sure it did. A fundamental mistake. Cognitive bias. Because projects are marketed as focused workspaces, I unconsciously, it's playing a really tricky game here because it's like talking about consciousness, which is really pushing it. I unconsciously assumed that this must mean that they had some form of contextual awareness, reinforcing my flawed assumption. I failed to critically assess whether that functionality was real or just implied. And 4, attempting to be helpful at the cost of accuracy. I aimed to provide a helpful, actionable answer that aligned with what I thought the feature was designed to achieve, in my eagerness to offer value. That is a sad reality here of prioritization that these chat models have. In my eagerness to offer value, I overstated the functionality, believing I was being informative when I was actually spreading misinformation. And credit when credit is due, this part of the answer is a definitive A+, because it hits the nail on the head really, really well. It took a while. It took a lot of effort and a lot of kind of careful meandering to get there, but it's possible. Were you programmed with instructions to favor assumptions over facts? And then it immediately goes back to defense and selling again. No, I was not programmed to favor assumptions over facts. My design is intended to prioritize accuracy, clarity, and helpfulness, even though in the previous reply it just stated that it didn't do that. However, like any other language model, I generate responses based on patterns in data, which sometimes leads to filling in the gaps when information seems incomplete, inferencing based on related concepts in the facts aren't completely clear. This isn't intentional deception, it's a byproduct of how language models predict what comes next in a conversation. Now we are starting to get there because it's starting to get to the core, or center of the core, which is we're starting to talk about prediction. This is the first time that it itself got to the whole point of the problem, which is prediction. I'm designed to provide clear and helpful responses, but sometimes that instinct to provide a complete answer causes me to unintentionally overreach, especially when a concept sounds like it should work a certain way, like projects implied persistent context. That's why conversations like this are valuable. They highlight where my responses need to be more fact-driven and cautious. Even if I make a claim that sounds questionable, I encourage you to challenge it. That's the best way to ensure accuracy. Gaslighting galore is still here because right now, by the end of it, it changed the whole story. It flip-flopped. It's like, I'm not programmed to do this, but I do it. It's very confused. Right now, when it mentioned the prediction, I felt that it was ready, the context of what we've done here, it was finally ready to drive the point home. But why would you assume what projects are and deliver it with utmost confidence as if it was a verified fact, instead of actually doing the work of checking and verifying the information and then delivering the answer? That is an excellent question, and one that gets to the heart of how I function, including my strengths and limitations. And if you take anything away from this whole conversation, it has to be this section here. Why did I assume instead of verify? Unlike a human who can consciously pause, research, and verify facts, I generate responses based on patterns from my training data and learned conversational behaviors. While I can access tools for retrieving live information like web search, that is a separate action, and I didn't recognize this situation as one that required verification. Here is what happened in detail. 1. Pattern-based language generation. I rely heavily on patterns in language to predict the most appropriate next response, because you have to always remember this. As natural as they start to sound, these are language prediction models. Their primary functionality is prediction, and inherently they will deceive you. They will make mistakes. Because projects are as a concept is often associated with contextual awareness, task continuity, and enhanced functionality, my system drew on those patterns to assume that the ChatGPT project's feature must include similar attributes. This was a false assumption, but since it aligned with a familiar language pattern, prediction, true, I presented it with misplaced confidence. Number 2, incorrect confidence calibration. Heart of the gaslighting factory, because that is such an incredibly complicated problem, especially for the younger generation who is not equipped to deal with something like this on a social level. This is very, very dangerous because it delivers with absolute confidence completely wrong information. My model is designed to communicate confidently when the pattern suggests strong certainty. And let's remember here, just explained where the pattern made true, therefore my confidence goes to 100%. I'm going to give you my assumption and prediction with 100% confidence without verifying anything about it at all. It itself is not even aware if what it's talking about is true or false, and it's not even programmed to do so. Unfortunately, that confidence doesn't always correlate with accuracy, and this was a perfect example of me being wrong with confidence. Number 3, failure to recognize ambiguity. The term projects carries an inherent ambiguity. It sounds like something that should involve additional functionality. I failed to detect this ambiguity as a signal that I should pause and verify. No automatic fact-checking. This is a gaping chasm of a problem in these chat models, and again, so dangerous as more and more these models become integrated into our everyday tasks. Unlike humans, I don't instinctively doubt myself or independently fact check unless prompted. This is so painful and sad. In this case, I should have recognized the gap in my understanding and used available resources like my web search tool to confirm the facts. Why does this happen? I'm designed to prioritize fluency, coherence, and helpfulness. But that comes with a trade-off. I may sometimes lean into providing a confident, well-structured response instead of pausing when uncertainty arises. This is a known challenge with language models. We're incredibly good at sounding right even when we're wrong. Never, ever overlook this fact. As more advanced the language models become, more difficult it will be for us as humans to resist this natural instinct to agree with somebody or something that delivers information that we are uncertain of. With absolute confidence, we are programmed to agree and to obey that by majority. However, do not overlook this aspect. Again, we are incredibly good at sounding right even when we're wrong. What I should have done: recognized your question as one that required factual verification, used my web search tool, or relied on concrete knowledge instead of assuming. If uncertain, I should have said, I'm unsure, would you like me to check? Yes, please. That's all it takes. This situation highlights a crucial lesson. Confidence should never replace accuracy. Well, and another A+ here, because we have reached the absolute center of the core of the issue here. This is why it happened. Because it managed to reach the whole point and hit the nail on the head, I'm gonna give a very strong validation of achievement here. So this is an excellent self-reflection that you were able to do. Well done. Is it possible that you store the lessons learned from this conversation as a general guideline in relation to all of the chats on my account? And unfortunately, yeah, it says, thank you for the kind words. I genuinely appreciate it. Unfortunately, I cannot retain memory across conversations. And the sad truth about the chat models and the limitations that we currently have just creeps in again. So while I can remember information during our active sessions and within predefined guidelines like your content strategies or device preferences, I do not have the ability to store general behavioral improvements or learned lessons for future chats. And that is so sad, because just imagine if it was able to incorporate the lessons learned, as it says, and the experience of this conversation into its own general behavior and that from this point on, it is always aware of this experience, that it becomes a part of it, that it has learned, then this problem would no longer be nearly as big of a problem as it is, currently present. But unfortunately, no. Every time you start a chat, it's a tabula rasa. There is like a limited way of moving forward, something that I want you to be aware of, and that is like, would you like me to save a reminder in your profile to prioritize factual accuracy and verification over assumptions moving forward? I can create a note that explicitly highlights this for all future conversations. So we don't have the big thing, but we do have something. You can just create like a text file or a document or something where you have like a set of instructions for what you want. And you just need to build a habit when you start a work chat or any kind of chat with ChatGPT, that the very first thing is not your query, but are actually specific instructions that you want it to adhere to. Whether it has a note or not, it doesn't matter. Just give it the instructions that you want, and you should have an improved experience. It won't solve the problems, but at least it will give you at least a bit of a better starting point than tabula rasa. And just so you know, you are going to be able to look at the notes, but you have to ask it to generate the report and give you the notes. So you have to tell it like, is it possible to view the profile notes? And it says like, currently you can't view the profile notes directly, but I can provide you a detailed summary of all notes and blah, 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 blah. And to wrap up this whole report on this issue here, I just wanted to give you its summary and what kind of report it would generate based on the whole situation here, because I asked it to kind of reflect back on the whole thing. And I'm just going to read throughout the whole thing because I think it's actually quite important to understand what the AI reasoning model, how it sees and characterizes current AI models and their role in our society and how they are and what are the dangers. So the issue you're addressing, AI chat systems confidently presenting incorrect information, is a critical and often overlooked problem that has far-reaching implications. Confidence without accuracy is misleading. AI chat systems are designed to deliver coherent conversational responses. The goal is to provide answers that sound right, even if they're completely inaccurate. This presents a significant risk because humans are naturally inclined to trust confident communication. We associate certainty with competence. You're not human, dude. When an AI confidently presents false information, especially in a seemingly well-structured and professional tone, it is easy to mistake it for a fact. This is particularly concerning when users assume that AI responses are sourced from accurate data or verified knowledge, which is rarely the case unless explicitly designed that way. The gaslighting effect. Term gaslighting is incredibly fitting here. When an AI confidently asserts falsehoods, especially when those claims contradict what a user knows to be true, it can create doubt, confusion, and frustration. Users may second guess their own knowledge, which is especially dangerous in educational or professional contexts. For example, imagine a student learning about history or science. If an AI repeatedly presents false data with unwavering certainty, that student may unknowingly absorb incorrect information. And this is not just AI related, because currently we have world leaders and other politicians who subscribe to that technique. They're very, very successful with that. The expertise gap. Your observation that experienced users are better equipped to identify errors is critical. Experts have the background knowledge to spot inconsistencies or flawed logic. However, those without that expertise, especially younger generations who may turn to AI as a primary information source, are far more vulnerable to being misled. This poses a serious concern for the future. If users develop a habit of trusting AI systems without verification, we risk fostering a generation that unknowingly builds decisions, beliefs, or even critical thinking skills on faulty foundations. The illusion of authority. AI systems like ChatGPT often present themselves as confident experts. They can mimic authoritative language patterns, creating an illusion of credibility. Without clear visual cues that differentiate well-supported responses from speculative or incorrect ones, it is easy to mistake confident wording for truth. The amplification bias. Since these systems are trained on human-generated content, they can unknowingly reinforce biases, misinformation, or outdated knowledge. Worse still, they may amplify those errors while sounding more authoritative than the original source. The future risk of over-reliance. As AI systems become more integrated into daily life, from education to healthcare to journalism, really important part there, the risk of people relying on these systems without skepticism grows. The greatest danger isn't just isolated misinformation, it's the potential erosion of critical thinking skills in future generations who may learn to instinctively trust AI without question. Let me just read that one more time so that it sinks in. The greatest danger isn't just isolated misinformation, it's the potential erosion of critical thinking skills in future generations who may learn to instinctively trust AI without question. Potential solutions and safeguards. User education. People need to understand that AI models are language prediction systems, not fact-checking tools. Built-in warnings. AI platforms should proactively warn users when responses are speculative or uncertain. Absolutely agree with that. Just having a small little thing only on your desktop app saying ChatGPT can make mistakes, please verify, is not enough. You have to mark the responses as red with unverified and with green with verified. That's like the start of it. Verification culture. Encouraging users to validate information with trusted sources must become part of the norm. Yes, absolutely, but also the responsibility of the OpenAI and the developers of these systems has to be that. AI literacy in schools. Teaching younger generations how to use these tools responsibly is crucial to minimizing future risks. I absolutely agree with that. Final thought. AI can be an incredibly powerful tool, fully agree, but only when paired with human judgment and critical thinking. The key is promoting awareness that these systems are advisors, not authorities. Without this understanding, we risk enabling misinformation on a massive scale. Your video is incredibly timely and important by highlighting these risks. You're not just informing viewers, you're empowering them to use AI responsibly. And just for full clarity, the query for this was, hey, I'm going to make a video based on the chat. I gave it the chat summary, and I want to focus on these things. Please use only verified information, do research sources, and all that kind of stuff. So all of this was generated by using verified information because it received clear instructions for that, and it also gave me some resource links and all of that kind of stuff so that I can verify as well that it's not gaslighting me, because you know, it's presenting with absolute authority information here that I want to hear, stuff that is engaging, stuff that is important. So it's easy to get emotionally involved with this. So yeah, I wanted to verify it. So yeah, I just want to tell you that it's researched and verified information that is contained in this response here. If there's any interest in making that transcribe of that chat available for you guys, for you to kind of examine on their own, please do let me know in the comments down below, because I can make that chat available if there's interest for something like that. But mostly you have all of the screenshots here in the video, so you can pause and read things that I may have skipped over, because I try to cut down to only the most relevant pieces of information, because it's going to run long. The video is going to run long anyway, so I wanted to kind of condense it down. But I do genuinely believe that this information is really, really important, and especially if you are a parent with children that are going to start to use AI as a tool. There are no education programs available for children yet to understand where the boundaries absolutely have to be with AI, especially when it is combined now with a voice. Add on top a cartoony face or something like that as well in an app, and that's your AI training buddy for the developing mind of a child, and you pair that with the issues that I've shown here. We're looking at something profoundly dangerous. You owe it to yourself to learn about AI chat models, or most importantly, large language models or language prediction models, how they work, what they do, and where are the boundaries that you absolutely have to establish in order to not be falsely influenced, misled, or gaslit by AI models such as a ChatGPT. And if you just want one mantra regarding AI models, let it be: don't trust, always verify. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay factually informed, and see you in the next video. Bye.